the large frequency limit. Let us first write out the equation again. Yes, this is of course again the same equation 3. Let's just go back for a moment to take stock here. So this is equation 3 which I have just written out. And let's call the solution we had obtained for the small frequency limit 6. Alright, okay, so now we want the limit of r omega being much greater than 1. So clearly the current form of equation 3 is not suitable to analyze that limit, right, because this middle term goes to infinity. I can of course divide throughout, but then I just get the funny behavior of the h term being unbalanced, right, whereas a properly scaled equation should always have one term balancing another, otherwise the coefficient cannot be order 1. I mean the variables cannot be order 1. Also, we had anticipated this earlier by recognizing that in the high frequency limit, the inertial term must balance the pressure gradient, right? Which in case it means this is really the inertial term, must balance this -1 term which came from the pressure gradient, and this viscous term is what must be small, right? Whereas if I just divide by r omega, I don't get that behavior, right? Because always the pressure gradient is still trying to balance the viscous term. So I need to rescale the velocity. But then because the velocity is basically represented by h here, I can just write a new h, let's call it h bar, is equal to old h times r omega. This, remember, is equivalent to, as I had shown earlier, this transformation is equivalent to rescaling the velocity by the inertial pressure gradient time scale rather than the viscous pressure gradient, inertial pressure gradient velocity scale rather than the inertial pressure gradient. Rather than the viscous pressure gradient velocity scale. So we had just done this earlier, so we'll make this substitution. So h is h bar by r omega, which will now give us the following. Right, we had seen this earlier when we looked at this limit of the problem before starting our perturbation solution. So this will give me minus IH bar equals -1. Okay, so now this is much more amenable to analysis and it makes more sense. So this equation now is in a form where we have actually obtained the velocity scale balancing the inertial term with the pressure gradient term. And moreover, now if Rw is much greater than 1 or 1 by Rw is small, right, we get that in that limit, it's basically a balance between IH bar and -1, right? Which means that in this leading order limit, right? So I could do a perturbation series expansion here, right? And write H bar, for example, is equal to H naught plus 1 by Rw H1 and so on. And then the equation for H naught would simply be where 1 by Rw goes to 0. So at order, so the leading order, right, is -1 or H bar naught is equal to -I. So it's actually 1 over I, then I can multiply I above and below and I get -I. Right? Or, okay, so this is the leading order behavior. I can then go to higher orders, but I'm going to stop now because I recognize that after this rescaling, this really means that if I take this to be the solution, that H is equal to -I by Rw plus order of 1 by Rw squared terms. Right, so our scaling had absorbed an Rw. So even if I solve H bar to just leading order, I'm actually solving for H to order 1 by Rw. So because, you can always extend the solution for H bar to the next order and I'll get higher order corrections to my solution for H. But in view of keeping things relatively simple, we'll just focus on the leading order term right now for this high frequency limit. Okay, but we can always go to higher orders. Alright, so stopping at this order, if this is the solution, I'm basically saying that the solution U, which remember is the imaginary part of e to the power I r omega t times h, right, is basically going to be given by cosine r omega t by r omega with a minus sign. Right, why? Because this is an imaginary term, so it can only multiply the cosine contribution from e to the power I r omega t, and well, basically that's what we get from that. So now what this tells me is this is an out of phase plug flow. Right, but clearly now this does not satisfy the boundary conditions of the problem. So in other words, if I take this solution close to the wall, it's going to fail because I know that U must be 0 at the wall for all time. However, it is valid for the core. So in fact, it does not satisfy the boundary conditions, it is only valid in the core. Yes, so we're in the large frequency limit, and what we saw is if you take RW being large, we basically lose out the viscous term, and what we are left with as a dominating balance is just IH and minus 1. So because you lost out the viscous term, you have changed the nature of the equation when you did the perturbation series from what was a second order problem in R to a problem that doesn't involve any derivatives in R. So therefore you can no longer apply your boundary conditions. So the fact that you have fundamentally changed the nature of the problem when you did your perturbation is what has led to this issue that your solution that you thus obtained is not valid throughout the domain. It's valid only in a part of the domain. And if, in fact, when you go near the boundaries, it cannot be valid because you cannot apply those boundary conditions. Now you might think, what happens if I go to higher order here? In fact, we can just do that to convince you. So if we substitute, if you had gone to the next order, remember you have a 1 by RW term sitting here. So the only contribution from this would be if you substitute H bar equals to H naught. So you will get 1 by R dou by dou R of H naught. But remember, H naught has no dependence on R. So this term again goes to 0 again. So you still don't have any derivatives in R. You get minus IH1, and this right hand side contributes nothing. So you will in fact get H1 equal to 0 and all higher order terms are equal to 0. Right? So in fact what we've done here is not really an approximation because this basically has H1 equal to 0, H2 equal to 0 and so on. So really the solution is just minus I by RW. Right? So taking higher orders won't solve the basic problem that we have, which is that the derivatives in R have been pushed to a higher order by being multiplied by 1 by RW, which is really the nature of the high frequency limit. And this is basically the reason why a perturbation solution that we obtain from this equation is never going to really give me a solution that's valid throughout the domain. And this is what we have called a singular perturbation. So this is a singular perturbation because it is valid in a portion of the domain. Right, which can be contrasted with a regular perturbation expansion, which is what we obtained for small RW, which was valid throughout the entire radial domain. Okay, so now what does this mean? It doesn't, we have obtained a solution that's partially valid. What we now need to do is to treat the problem separately in the near wall region so that we can account for the effects of viscous stresses at leading order and allowing us to apply the boundary conditions near the wall. So if we can obtain a solution for the flow near the wall and we already have a solution for the flow away from the wall, we can somehow patch them together and obtain a perturbation solution that's valid everywhere. This is the hope, and this is the general way one has to approach such singular perturbation problems. Now, before we proceed with that program, it's important to realize that this kind of singular perturbation solution, which is only partially valid, is not just a mathematical outcome, right? It's not just a consequence of the fact that you have a small parameter multiplying the highest derivative in the problem. It actually represents the physics of the problem, which is that if you go to the high frequency limit, it's really inertia that's trying to balance the pressure gradient throughout most of the domain. However, when you go near the wall, it's certain that viscous stresses become important, because that's where the fluid velocity starts going to zero. And so near the wall, we should again revert to a balance where viscous stresses become as important as the pressure gradient and the inertial term. And that is in fact the boundary layer which we have encountered previously in our scaling, right? So whenever we did scaling previously in such problems, we had also recognized there that in such cases, where you have boundary layers, away from the wall you can neglect the viscous stresses, but close to the wall you have to rescale the problem with the boundary layer scaling in order to be able to apply your boundary conditions and to identify the region of the domain where the viscous stresses still play a role. And here we can see mathematically that when we try to solve a problem, even if you hadn't realized that there was a boundary layer in your problem at the point of scaling, when you now come to solve the problem using perturbation expansions, you are forced to confront this fact that there is a boundary layer, right? Because if you don't recognize that and you just proceed with the perturbation expansion as we did here, you will only find a solution that's valid away from the boundaries, which is what we just did. And that solution is just a plug flow solution out of phase with the pressure gradient. But we know that this cannot be the solution everywhere, because it has to go to zero near the walls. And therefore we know that we need to come back to our equation 3, or the rescale high frequency limit equation. Wait, let me call this H, so I can call this high frequency equation for H bar 7. So we need to come back to 7 and rescale it, and so that we can identify a boundary layer near the wall where this viscous term becomes an order 1 term. And then we can solve for the behavior of the flow velocity close to the wall. Also note that we would end up with the same solution even if I didn't rescale the problem to H bar. So if I had proceeded with H and done a perturbation solution, it would not have been it would not be the ideal way to proceed, because equation 7 really reflects the correct scaling. But even if you had done a perturbation solution for H, right, starting with equation 3, if you did the same perturbation solution for H, writing H is equal to H naught plus 1 by RW H1 plus so on, you would have, and of course after dividing throughout by RW, you can reach the same conclusion, right? So if you had done that, you would have seen that H naught would have actually been 0, and H1 now would have given you the solution minus I, and H2 and so on would be 0. Okay, so you can try this as an exercise starting from equation 3, divide throughout by 1 by RW, and then try to obtain a perturbation solution for H in this following form as H naught plus 1 by RW H1 and so on, and you should be able to show that H naught would be 0 and H1 would be minus I and all other terms are 0. So you would land up with the same problem of having a solution only for the core. What we have done is obtain equation 7 first, because it represents the correct scaling, the balance of inertial terms with pressure gradient, and then done the perturbation expansion as a power series of 1 by R omega. But that doesn't really change the fundamental fact that we'll get a solution only valid in the core, right? Because either way, this viscous term is an order smaller than the inertial term. Alright, so let us now look for the near wall solution, or the boundary layer, what's also known as a boundary layer analysis. Okay, so to do that, we need to go back to equation 7, and we want to rescale this equation such that the viscous term is retained at leading order. So we can do this now in two ways. We can recognize that what we want is to rescale R such that this RW term gets absorbed, right? And so that we can retain this term at leading order. Alternatively, we can also simply say that what I want to do based on our understanding of scaling analysis and boundary layers is I want to rescale the R coordinate not with the radius as the length scale but with the boundary layer thickness as the length scale, because what I'm basically saying is I want a solution in the near wall region. So therefore my H bar of interest is varying only near the wall, right? It's not varying throughout the flow domain. In fact, this is why we have a problem with a perturbation expansion, right? Because we have assumed during the perturbation expansion that these derivative terms are order 1, so that multiplying 1 by RW makes them small. What's actually happening is near the wall, even though this 1 by R term is multiplying it, the derivative of H bar by R near the wall is becoming large, right? So this is why this term becomes deceptive and we don't get the correct perturbation solution. So rescaling the problem is recognizing that dou H bar by dou R becomes large near the wall, and I can make it order 1 by rescaling R with a smaller length scale, right? So that dou H bar by the new dou R bar is going to actually be order 1, whereas right now dou H bar by dou R is something large near the wall. So to recognize that, I'll go to the boundary layer scaling, which means I want to write a new R bar to be equal to R star by delta, but I can write that as R star by capital R into capital R by delta. Right, so this is similar to what we had done before, and what I want to do is I want to find out what this delta is. Okay, and this I can do by, of course, requiring that the viscous term is order 1. Right, so this is basically the old, so I'm seeking a R bar which is scaled relative to delta. That can be written like writing R bar is equal to R into R by delta. If I now substitute this, where was I? Yes, if I now substitute this into this equation, what am I going to get? Well, you just replace R by R bar into R by delta, right? And I will get 1 by RW. I'm going to get this R and R factors will cancel, so I just get 2 factors of R. The whole square times 1 by R bar of H bar minus I H bar equals minus 1. Right, so this is my new equation. Right, after substituting R is equal to R bar into delta by R. Wait, did I get the factor right? R is equal to R bar into delta by R. So if I substitute this in here, R becomes R bar into delta by R into delta by R. So it's the other way around. It's delta by R the whole square but in the denominator. So let's just put a minus 2 there. Okay, so this is now the prefactor of the viscous term. So therefore, to retain the viscous term at leading order, right, I need delta by R to be equal to R omega to the minus half. Right, so this is my boundary layer scaling. So the boundary layer relative to the channel height is just Rw to the minus half, which makes sense, right? Because for large Rw, it means this is basically 1 by Rw to the half. So for large Rw, delta becomes smaller and smaller. So in the high frequency limit, I have a thin boundary layer. In the large Rw limit, I have a thin boundary layer. If I have the low frequency limit and Rw starts becoming small, the boundary layer will grow to encompass the entire channel. So this delta really does behave like a boundary layer. And we have obtained it by rescaling the problem and by requiring the viscous term to survive. Now, of course, you can look back at this in hindsight and say, okay, I should have figured this out, because what you've really done is done a mathematical transformation where R bar is equal to the old R into some factor. And if I want to absorb this Rw, the factor, if the factor is Rw to the minus half, and I get two of those factors out from the viscous term, it will cancel off with this. So to absorb this, I could have mathematically recognized that the factor should be Rw, or basically R bar should be equal to Rw to the minus half times R. Right, purely mathematically. But if you go back and rescale the problem in terms of delta, you can also see this nicely, and it makes the interpretation clear that this rescaling is equivalent to doing a boundary layer scaling of the R coordinate. Okay, so now my equation, my boundary layer equation is now 1 by R bar dou by dou R bar of R bar dou H bar by dou R bar minus I H bar equals minus 1. Yes, so this is our equation. Now, for a second, it may be a little confusing because it seems like I have lost the Rw factor completely, and there seems to be no way. I mean, you expect there to be a 1 over Rw somewhere, right? Because I'm also looking for a perturbation solution, and also I expect the problem to reflect the fact that I have a small parameter 1 over Rw, and it doesn't seem to be here. But what we have not yet looked at is, of course, the boundary conditions in the transformed variable R bar. So let's see what happens there. I know that H, right, H must be equal to 0 at the wall, right, which means earlier it was R is equal to 1, but given my transformation, that's like saying R bar is equal to R omega to the half. Right, and H must be bounded at R bar equal to 0, where R is 0. Okay, so now you see that R omega makes its appearance again, but in the boundary. Now, because it's in the boundary, it's not all that convenient. Also, what it means here is that the boundary condition which we are really interested in enforcing, right, the H equal to 0 condition, which is near the wall, can only be enforced in this equation as R bar goes to Rw to the half, which means that as R omega becomes much greater than 1 and tends to infinity, H is equal to 0 as R bar goes to infinity. Right, so this is not very convenient to apply mathematically in the solution of this problem. Right, because what we remember that the core solution already satisfies H being bounded at the core. The reason of doing this rescaling and going to the boundary layer is so that we can solve this equation near the wall. But to apply the boundary condition near the wall, I need to take the coordinate R bar to extremely large values as the frequency gets larger and larger. So this form of the problem is not really very suitable to solve this equation, right, in the limit of large Rw. In fact, if you even want to think of it numerically, if you try to, let's say, solve this equation now numerically, right, in the limit of large Rw, you see that you need to solve it in a larger and larger domain in order to apply the condition near the wall. So instead, what we would like is to have a change in coordinates such that we are near the wall for our coordinate being 0, and when the coordinate goes to infinity, we can approach the core, right? Because anyway, we don't really care about applying the boundary condition near the core, because that's already been taken care of by our solution that we obtained for the core region, right? In the scaling, in the non-boundary layer version of the problem. Right? That was equation 8. So this equation, solution 8 already satisfies the core boundary condition. Let's call this 9. So equation 9 is not yet in the ideal form for our analysis, as you can see naturally. Also mathematically, we would like this factor Rw to come into the equation so that we can do a perturbation expansion. So that, along with the fact that we would like to apply the boundary condition at a meaningful value of the coordinate, drives us to do a shift. So we shift to a near wall coordinate y.